Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Our country's federal party leaders have been speaking out about how Canada will move forward now that we have another Liberal minority government. Political reporter Brian Lilly gives us his thoughts as to why the Conservatives failed to win the 44th federal election. And we hear from a local school board trustee candidate who explains why she deserves your vote next month.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he's looking forward to brighter days ahead and getting Canada through the pandemic. The Liberals managed to secure a minority government in Monday night's election, but fell short of their coveted majority.
Millions of Canadians have chosen a progressive plan. Some have talked about division, but that's not what I see. That's not what I've seen these past weeks across the country. I see Canadians standing together in your determination to end this pandemic, together for real climate action, for $10 a day childcare, for homes that are in reach for middle-class families.
Now, the final election results in 24 ridings may not be known for a number of days as mail-in ballots are still being counted. As of Tuesday, the Liberals were leading in 158 ridings, while the Conservatives were leading in 119. Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole spoke following news that the Liberals won a minority government, saying we may be seeing yet another costly election in less than 2 years.
Canadians sent him back with another minority at the cost of $600 million and deeper divisions in our great country. Just days ago, he said he would hold yet another election within 18 months if he didn't get his way. Mr. Trudeau was hoping for a quick power grab. Instead, he has thrust us into what he has promised will be 18 months of perpetual campaigning. Our country is facing the most serious economic challenge since the Great Depression. Even before the pandemic led to record debt and deficits, investment and jobs were leaving Canada.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was in a pretty good mood with the recent election results, winning or leading in 25 ridings. Political reporter Brian Lilly says by watching Singh on stage Monday night, it almost looked like his party won the election.
Jagmeet Singh took them from 44 seats down to 24, and they acted as if he'd won the Super Bowl. Now he's taken them up to, I think he's sitting at about 28 right now. All these numbers can change, and they're still acting like they won. The NDP has to decide what they want to be. Are they just the conscience of Parliament, or do they want to replace the Liberals as the real progressive option?
Catch the entire interview with Mr. Lilly as we also discuss what went well and wrong for both the Liberals and Conservatives. That's coming up after Business News. Miracle Channel CEO Leon Fontaine also had a few words to share following the 44th federal election.
Well, Canadians have voted and we have elected a leader for our nation. I want to remind you as believers, whether or not your party got in, we are commanded by the Word of God to pray for leaders. I love the fact that Jesus said, I will build my church. That's we the people. And the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So we continue to take the gospel to the world, to pray for our leaders, to believe that the light grows brighter and brighter, and to know the nation of Canada is moving up because God is going to continue to work through His church.
Thanks so much, Leon. Now, following her landslide victory on Monday night, Lethbridge Conservative candidate Rachel Harder spoke with Bridge City News. She says thanks to a lot of door knocking, she got to know many of the concerns people in our city have and how she plans to hold the Liberals accountable once again.
In a 36-day campaign, my team and I knocked over 23,000 doors, so we definitely had a lot of opportunity to talk with the electorate in Lethbridge. A couple of the things that we heard over and over again was definitely, out of control spending and very little accountability, plus very little to show for the spending that's rolled out the door. And so that's a big, area of concern for the people of Lethbridge. Certainly another concern that I heard again and again just had to do with accountability and ethics. So certainly seeing Prime Minister Trudeau function with a lack of ethical conduct and the people of Lethbridge wanting him held accountable for those things. I mean, we're talking about about a prime minister who was convicted not just once, but twice by the ethics commissioner. And in Canada's history, there's not a single prime minister that's been convicted even once.
Alberta Premier Jason Kenney congratulated Justin Trudeau on being re-elected as Prime Minister. In a statement, Premier Kenney also had this to say: Alberta's government will continue its fight to secure a fair deal in Confederation, beginning with much-needed reform to the federal equalization and fiscal stabilization programs. Economic recovery must also include all regions and all sectors of Canada's economy. This is especially important for our energy sector, the country's largest industrial sector. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney met with the media on Tuesday afternoon to announce a minor cabinet shuffle. Tyler Shandro and Jason Copping are switching portfolios. Copping becomes our province's new health minister, while Shandro takes over as the Minister of Labour and Immigration. The announcements come as the COVID-19 pandemic wreaks havoc on our province's healthcare system. It also came on the same day that Alberta Municipal Affairs Minister Rick McIver asked Ottawa to help with patient transfers and critical care staff. Now, the Alberta Union of Provincial Employees welcomed Tyler Shandro's ousting as health minister. In a statement earlier today, their group's Vice President Susan Slade said good riddance. She also said Tyler Shandro set fire to Alberta's healthcare system and hung Albertans out to dry throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. It's past time for him to suffer some consequences for his actions. Nomination papers for the municipal election had to be in by noon on Monday. 4 current Lethbridge City Councillors and 1 former Lethbridge Mayor have put their names forward to be re-elected on October the 18th. Carson Marsouk has the breakdown of each candidate and where they stand on a wide variety of issues.
4 city councillors and 1 former mayor have all filed their nomination papers for the upcoming municipal election. Belinda Croson has served on council for 1 term. She says she wants to be a part of council and continuing to make a change for the city.
One of the things I have been talking to is a lot of young entrepreneurs, and there's a lot of businesses starting in Lethbridge, new ideas, and they need a council, and they need a Lethbridge to support them, and I'd love to be part of that. I would love to be part of continuing to build a better Lethbridge.
Another familiar face seeking re-election is Mark Campbell. He says one of the issues he hopes to bring back to council if re-elected is Lethbridge's social issues.
One of the big problems that we have is we don't have enough facilities. So to create partnerships with either the federal or provincial government to find out where we can, create affordable housing.
As well, Ryan Parker is seeking his 8th term on council, and he says he's hoping to add another 4.
Try to make our community safe as a place for people to raise a family. And by doing so, we need to make sure that our police have the appropriate funds in place. And also, we have to make sure we have the services to help these folks out.
Advanced voting will start on October 1st, and 5-term councillor Jeff Carlson will be one of the names listed on the ballot.
I still have a passion for this work. I do enjoy the work. I'm very dedicated to it, dedicated to our city. So that's always driving me, is the desire to continually make Lethbridge the best place to live, work, play, and grow.
Another well-known name is also eyeing a spot in council chambers. Reiko Dodick served as a 2-term city councillor and the mayor before stepping back. He says he hopes to address the pay-as-you-go and police budget.
And you've seen that council has, in fact, from time to time reduced the police budget, and then every once in a while they'll put some back into it. And policing is one of the things that I don't think you should be tinkering with too much.
As for current city councillor Joe Morrow, he has decided to not seek re-election. For Bridge City News, I'm Carson Marsouk.
Sticking with the municipal election, the City of Lethbridge announced new information and its efforts in the lead up to the election. There will be 2 ballots for voters to fill out this year, a municipal one including mayoral, city councillor candidates, and school board trustees. The provincial one will include the 2 referendum questions. Advance voting for anyone opens on October the 1st, and voters can vote at any polling station in the city.
The first advance vote would be the weekend of the 1st, and that takes place here at City Hall on Friday and Saturday. Voting hours are from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. The second weekend is in the east at the exhibition. It's a drive-through strictly, and so people can vote from their cars. And that's also an added safety precaution with COVID-19. And then the third weekend will be in the west. It'll be at the ATV Center, and it will run on the Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
As of Tuesday at noon, there are 6 mayoral and 32 city councillor candidates running for this year's election. Alison Purcell will be running for the position of public school trustee in the municipal election on October the 18th. Purcell served 8 years on the board of the Alberta School Councils Association, with 4 of those as president. She said she had a chance to look at education through various lenses. Her main platform will highlight transparency, accountability, and inclusion.
When we look at it, an education for all, it really is a place that everybody can get an education. So no matter what, whether it's a cultural issue, a gender identity issue, disability, it should be an education for all, and we should be able to provide the supports that are necessary. And when we're providing the supports that are necessary, it supports all students in a classroom. It supports the teacher. It makes for a much better educational opportunity for all students. I strongly believe that all children should have an opportunity to an education and be supported to get through to that high school diploma and be able to become contributing members of society.
Purcell adds that she believes the current draft curriculum for the public education system needs to be updated. Alberta Health Services has cancelled all non-urgent surgeries in the province because of a surge in COVID-19 cases. Now, with this next story, BCN's Naveen Day speaks with patients who are frustrated about facing more delays.
It can take months or even years to have your non-urgent medical procedure scheduled. So imagine the dismay you would experience if you were called and told that your surgery has been postponed indefinitely. That was the sad reality for many Albertans recently. And last week, I spoke with 2 Lethbridge residents who say they have lost their scheduled procedure dates.
I was due for hip replacement on my left hip on Monday of this week. They said that elective surgery was cancelled until further notice.
I'm having to have steel rods put in my upper legs. Been waiting over 5 years now for these surgeries. About 2 months ago I had my first one on my left leg, waiting on my second one. I went in about 2 weeks ago up to Calgary to the surgeon where I was appointed at, and now everything's being put on hold.
Both Wilson and Ross were told over the phone that their procedures, which required overnight stays, were cancelled in order to free up beds that may be needed due to a rise of COVID-19 cases. While they understand that things can get delayed during a pandemic, they are frustrated that they have to keep their lives on hold.
I'm very frustrated. It's just, I'm trying to get myself fixed up, trying to get myself better, you know, trying to make my own life better, and it's just this COVID thing is just holding everybody back.
It took a year to get in to see for a consult, and then it's taken now till another year to get a date. So of course I am frustrated now because of course we don't know how long it will be before I'll be rescheduled.
As of Monday afternoon, Alberta's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, tweeted that there are 954 people in hospitals across the province due to COVID-19, and 216 of those are in ICU. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
Lethbridge police are investigating an accident which sent a 27-year-old Lethbridge motorcyclist to hospital on Monday. Police say the bike was traveling southbound on 43rd Street when it collided with a northbound vehicle that was turning west onto Crow's Nest Trail. The motorcyclist was airlifted to a hospital in Calgary with life-threatening injuries. Police say the 78-year-old driver of the SUV, who was also from Lethbridge, was not injured. Investigators say that neither drugs or alcohol were factors in the crash. Lethbridge police were called to the south part of the city after an officer on patrol heard what he believed was a gunshot in the area. Witnesses say a male subject shot a round from a rifle. Police say the incident occurred in the 2200 block of 7th Avenue South around 3:15 p.m. on Monday. 27-year-old Rory McGinnity was quickly located and arrested without incident. The firearm was also recovered. No injuries were reported and the investigation continues. McGinnity faces several charges, including the careless use of a firearm, possession of an offensive dangerous weapon in public, discharging a firearm with the intent to injure, and mischief. 2 new police service dogs are ready to make their mark with the Lethbridge Police Service. The canines were honored today as they start their work with the LPS. Micah Quinn has those details.
Police service dogs Zap and Aaron were both awarded badges in a ceremony welcoming them to the LPS. Retired police dog Arco was also honored with a plaque for his service with the LPS.
Most pet owners would probably, agree with me that it's just a unique bond between animal and human, and to be able to to get paid to do that and hang out with an animal is awesome.
Constable Stephen Zwartbull says service dog Aaron specializes in evidence searches and tracking in our city.
So sometimes when an offense happens, you'll get a subject, a female or a male, drop something on the way as they run away, or whatever the case may be. So as humans, we do a terrible job of searching, right? We glance over things, we look, yeah, we were covered. Whereas when you get something small, you don't know how valuable that is to a file until later on sometimes, where you can utilize the wind and the environmental situation around you and let the dog's nose do the work where they're strong, right? So you always start downwind, you work yourself in a grid pattern, and basically the dog will indicate on something if he finds fresh human scent. So if you get 3 articles, but 2 of them don't have fresh human scent, he'll pass by those and indicate on the one where he has taken it from it.
The dogs go through 5 months of training before they hit the streets. The constables are in charge of the dogs for life and will take them to work and bring them home after. In this case, dogs truly are man's best friend. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Local artists are being invited to show off their creative skills for a chance to win a cash prize in the YQL Expressions of Art and Media Contest. The 4th annual contest is a combined effort drawn up by the United Way and other groups in the city to provide an opportunity to talk about reconciliation. The executive director for the United Way in Lethbridge, Janelle Marietta, says the contest coincides with the theme of Reconciliation Week here in Lethbridge.
A lot happening in the community in terms of healing and really dealing with a lot of information that's coming forward that we've known for a long time. But it is a challenging thing to understand, to comprehend what has happened in history and in the past and what continues to go on in our communities. And so this is just a really different way to engage the community and talk about those really challenging topics and find ways to heal with each other and just to move that conversation forward between our community members and what we can do to actually see reconciliation happen.
The first prize winner will be awarded $350, and second place, not too bad either, at $200. Police in Edmonton have introduced new vaccine requirements. Members have 3 options now: vaccinate, pay for their own COVID-19 rapid tests, or stay home without pay until the situation changes. The service's volunteers and contractors will also be required to either indicate they've been fully vaccinated or submit to rapid testing. A police spokesperson says more than 86% of the service's sworn and civilian employees have now been fully vaccinated. Well, the leaves have begun changing color here in Lethbridge, and why not? The first official day of autumn is coming up. It will, however, feel more like summer this week. Complete weather details are on deck. The amazing weather continues for many regions of southwestern Alberta, but we should also expect some gusty winds. Jeanette Rocher is here now with a complete look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, now we're not talking about Category 1 or 2 winds, but they could still get up to, what, 60 kilometers an hour?
Yeah, Hal, those winds gusting 40 to 60 kilometers per hour and then diminishing later on tonight to 20 to 40. Those winds still kicking around. Tomorrow on Wednesday, we're looking at 30 to 50 kilometer per hour winds. But hey, not a bad way to start out our fall. First day of fall, by the way, Wednesday, high of 24, mix of sun and cloud. We're looking at Thursday, high of 20. And then look at the temperature for the rest of the week there. Friday, high 26, up to 30 expected on Saturday, 25 on Sunday, and then 27 on Monday. I will take that for the beginning of fall, absolutely, meaning we are well above the average high for this time of year of 19 degrees. Average low, 4 degrees. On this day, back in 1938, we were at 32 degrees. That was a hot one. -7 is where we were at back in 1995, and that was the chilliest one that we had on this day. 7:16 is when the sun rose this morning, or sunset this evening, 7:32 p.m. So just a little teeny bit over 12 hours of daylight as we are moving closer to the fall there. Looking like a rainy one tomorrow on the coast. A high of 19 in Victoria, 18 in Vancouver. Looking at a high of 19 in Edmonton tomorrow with a mix of sun and cloud. 22 the high in Calgary. Both of those cities, we're looking at wind gusts 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. As for the rest of the prairies, looking at about 20 k winds for both Saskatoon and Regina. But look at that weather there. Saskatoon tunes, high 27 tomorrow with lots of sunny skies. Sunshine in Regina at 25, 23 the high in Winnipeg with sunny skies. They should get a little bit more winds there to 30 to 50 kilometer per hour gusts. Now there is a weather statement in effect for Toronto. They're looking at significant rainfall tonight through Wednesday night. 22 the high, risk of a thunderstorm tomorrow as well. Looking at possible thunderstorms tomorrow in Ottawa as well. Montreal going to be a nice warm one, 27. They're looking at a humidex of 32 as well. 23 in Fredericton tomorrow. Halifax high 23 as well. Sunshine there. Sunny skies expected in Charlottetown, also a high of 23. And should be a nice one in St. John's tomorrow as well. 22 the high with sunny skies. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Twitter says it will pay $809.5 million US to settle a class action lawsuit alleging it misled investors about how much its user base was growing and how much users interacted with its platform. The San Francisco-based company says the proposed settlement resolves all claims against it without Twitter admitting to any wrongdoing. The original lawsuit filed in 2016 claimed that inaccurate public statements resulted in an inflated share price that fell when the truth about user engagement became known. The settlement must now be signed off by a judge. McDonald's has announced plans to drastically reduce the plastic in its Happy Meal toys worldwide by the year 2025. The burger giant says it is working with toy companies to create cardboard superheroes kids can build on board games with plant-based or recycled game pieces. McDonald's says it is also exploring using recycled plastic toys to make new restaurant trays. A European trade official says Australia's cancellation of a French submarine contract will complicate and delay negotiations on an Australian-European Union trade deal. Bernd Lange says Australia's decision was kind of an attack against European interests. Lange says the trade deal will not be signed before French elections, which will be held in May of next year. The security alliance announced by the U.S. last week would deliver Australia nuclear-powered subs to replace the diesel-electric models the French were to build. France responded to the snub of its own contract by recalling its ambassadors from the U.S. and Australia. France's top diplomat cites a crisis of trust in the U.S. at this time. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 89 points on the day to finish at 20,244. The Dow was down 50 points to 33,920. The S&P 500 was down 3 points to 4354, and the Nasdaq was up 32 points to 14,746. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 27 cents to 70.56 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 18 cents to 4.81 US. Gold was down 7 cents to finish at 17.7444 US an ounce, and silver was even at 22.49 US an ounce. Wheat is at $11.16 per bushel, barley's at $8.82, canola's at $19.50, and corn is at $10.92 per bushel. Live cattle were down 33 cents to $122.45, feeder cattle were down 5 cents to $156.63, and lean hogs were down 60 cents to $84.38. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 77.99 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, even though the Trudeau Liberals have been re-elected with a minority government, Elections Canada says around 800,000 to 900,000 ballots are still being counted. The final election results in 24 ridings may not be known for a number of days as those mail-in ballots are being counted. As of Tuesday, the Liberals were leading in 158 ridings, while the Conservatives were leading in 119. There were a lot of thoughts following the federal election campaign, including where things went wrong for a number of federal parties. Political reporter Brian Lilly will give us his thoughts next. The federal election has come and gone, and we're right back where we started, a Liberal minority government. To discuss this and how Canada's 44th election unfolded is political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly, joining us once again from Toronto. Brian, the Liberals were leading or elected in 157 seats. Now that's the exact same number they won in 2019 and 13 shy of a 170 needed for a majority. There's still almost 800,000 mail-in ballots to be counted. Will that change any of the outcomes in some of the tightly contested ridings?
It really could. In my count, it's closer to over 900,000 mail-in ballots waiting to be counted. When I was speaking with Elections Canada, it's weird. There are different numbers. One of my colleagues was told 750. You've got 8. So there's regardless, there's a lot of mail-in ballots to be counted. And in some ridings, this could be the difference between a win and a loss. Look especially for British Columbia, because the top 10 ridings, no riding had more than about 12,000 mail-in ballots requested across the country, but 7 of the top 10 ridings for mail-in ballots were British Columbia. It was heavily favored in the Lower Mainland and Vancouver Island. The other 3, 2 were in Ottawa, 1 was in Toronto, 3 Liberal strongholds that will not be overturned. But will some of those other ridings, like Nanaimo, Ladysmith, will it be up in the air? We're going to have to wait and see how this plays out and where those ballots go. 12,000 ballots in a tight race can make a world of difference. So we may not know the final count, but at the end of the day, Hal, we're pretty close to living Bill Murray's Groundhog Day life here. We had a 36-day campaign, woke up, and it's the same as it was before. What was the point of the $610 million election? Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe putting out a statement calling it pointless, unneeded, and a waste of money, and said it's time for the federal government to get back to work.
Yeah, it's deja vu for me and you and many of our viewers as well. Now, Brian, many out here expected a Conservative government, at least a minority. What happened?
2 things happened. The Lower Mainland of British Columbia shifted seats from the Conservatives to the Liberals and the New Democrats. And in the 905 region of Toronto, the NDP vote collapsed. Now, there was a lot of talk before the election about would the People's Party steal seats away from the Conservatives. And my read of it so far, and continuing to pore over data, is yeah, that did happen in some seats, including in BC's Lower Mainland area, but also in places you wouldn't have expected. Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, Nipissing, Temiskaming, 2 northern ridings, Kitchener area in southern Ontario. But the primary problem was that they could not break through in the 905. There's 49 ridings that make up the GTA, according to Elections Canada. They defined the Toronto area for their purposes as 49 ridings. And I think the Liberals took all but 2. The Conservatives took 2. 1 they already held. That was Thornhill, formerly held by Peter Kent, now held by Melissa Landsman. And it looks like they're going to take Vaughan, one of the ridings in the area of Vaughan, just north of Toronto. But other than that, what happened? Suburban women turned their backs on the Conservatives. A lot of voters who were going to go NDP went for the Liberals. The NDP across the entire Toronto area were below 14% of the vote. In many of the suburban ridings where the Conservatives had a shot and they were tight-ish races, the NDP were below 8%. At that point, it is difficult. You know, if you've got a Conservative candidate pushing 40% of the vote, but the Liberal still wins, well, the Green vote went somewhere. Part of that Green vote went to the People's Party. Most of it went to the Liberals. The NDP vote disappeared. When it's 10 points below the national average, it's going to the Liberals. That's hard to fight against no matter who you are.
It's interesting because a lot of our viewers are asking why you guys focus so much on the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area, Brian, because there's just so many seats in those regions there.
There's more seats there than in all of Alberta.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Now, Brian, the Tories did end up taking the popular vote, but didn't win enough seats. Explain to our viewers how that can really happen.
Because it's really 338 individual elections. And so, you know, the Conservatives won about 31% of the vote in that Toronto area. They won about 35% of the vote across Ontario. So in Ontario, overall, they did better than the national average. But that national average is also bolstered by the fact that in Alberta, it's about 54% of the vote. In Saskatchewan, about the same. But in Quebec, only about 19%. We count our votes by each individual riding. So 338 individual ridings have an election, and they decide who they're going to put into power. In this case, the Liberals lost seats in Atlantic Canada. They came out about even in Quebec. They lost seats in Ontario. They made up for them in British Columbia. They won 1 seat in Alberta, Calgary Skyview. But, you know, in that one, that's the case of finding a local, popular local politician and having them run. I ran the numbers on that one. And in that case, the PPC was not a factor.
Will the Conservatives consider maybe replacing Erin O'Toole, or will they stick with their leader as they try to take Canada back?
It depends on whether they want to win or they just want to have a fight. Look, Stephen Harper lost in 2004, learned a lot of lessons, ran again in 2005, 2006, and won. In 2019, they, did away with Andrew Scheer right away. I thought that was a mistake then. I still think it's a mistake to say we've got to get rid of Erin O'Toole. I've already heard from some Conservatives, Hal, including some who say, look, he ran as too much of a moderate. We need to have a real right-wing party. Well, if you think that the answer to not winning a single seat, one single new seat in the GTA, if you think the answer is go harder right, then don't have a political party, have a debating society, because you've got to find a way to convince those suburban women in the Lower Mainland, in the 905, to cast their ballot for you. Stephen Harper was able to do it without being a liberal light or a liberal sellout. He was able to do it. There are ways to get it done. But just, going red meat, far right, as some of the people calling for O'Toole to be dispatched with, well, all that'll do is, you'll win seats in Alberta that you won by 60%. You'll win by 70% next time. But you're not going to win any more seats in Ontario. Politics is about building a winning coalition. Every party is a coalition. If you just want to be a pure debating society, go ahead. But otherwise, you've got to find out why those women in places that used to vote Conservative, like Markham, like Burlington, like Oakville, wealthy suburban suburbs, why did people back the Liberals instead of your guy? And then figure out how to get them onto your side without giving up on all your principles.
Now, Liberal leader Justin Trudeau, Brian, really can't be happy that he didn't get his majority. What went wrong there for the Liberals?
They miscalculated. They miscalculated badly, thinking that they were going to get a majority, that they were believing the hype in the polls. And you and I talked about it at the time, and I said, Hal, don't believe these polls that say it's a cakewalk. And by the way, for the Conservatives griping today, remember, all the pundits, except a few, at the start of this campaign said it was a cakewalk for the Liberals. They're going to win the biggest majority. I had some Liberals telling me 210 seats. None of that came to fruition. So that's a good sign for the Conservatives. Bad sign for the Liberals, though. They believed their own hype. The electorate was fluid. They went from a 10 at one point, 14-point lead to a 3-point lead, back up to a 10-point lead. And they took that as the public was on side with them. No, the public was uneasy, fragile, trying to make up their minds. And then the campaign happened. They were upset that there was a pandemic election. I think that some of Trudeau's foibles and those of his party did hurt him. Remember, he went down in the popular vote. He went down in the number of votes total that his party took. So this is not in any way a victory for him. He is a diminished man with a diminished mandate, but he's still walking around as if he won the world's biggest majority. No humility in his speech on election night. No sign that he thinks he needs to heal the divide that it is in the country between East and West, urban and rural, suburban, different classes of people. He sees none of that. He only sees victory for himself, and that's what he's going to run with.
Brian, let's talk about Maxime Bernier's party, the People's Party of Canada. They failed to secure a seat, including in Bernier's own Quebec riding. Should Bernier maybe consider riding here in the West? I mean, we saw a lot of the video of the rallies, 3,000 people out in Kelowna. Here in Alberta, he had quite a few people come out. Maybe you should focus more on the West and trying to win a seat out here.
There was someone that called into John Gormley's show in Saskatchewan, talk radio show in, my favorite prairie province. You're the second favorite. He called in and said that Bernier this guy was for the Maverick Party, and said Bernier has attracted the kooks that go with a new party. And all new parties attract people that are just hanging on. Bernier's unfortunately attracted too many of them, and that leaves a bad taste in the mouth for a lot of voters that might otherwise consider them. He's got a strange coalition of, the kooks that will show up to any new party, but also he's got people who say they're principled conservatives. He's got former Green voters who are anti-vaxxers. He has people who are just against the lockdowns. If those vaccine and lockdown issues go away by the time the next election goes, I don't know that he's going to go so well. Talking with my friend John Wright, the pollster with Maru Public Opinion, He thinks that this is an interesting movement that we have to study to find out who exactly is in there. The view from the People's Party themselves is they're about 50% disaffected Conservative voters, 25% from other parties, and 25% of people who've never been involved in politics. And please, for folks that are disaffected Conservatives sticking with the PPC, don't take my comment about kooks as an insult to you. That 25% that was never involved in politics, those are the people that were the kooks that showed up with Trump, the kooks that showed up with the Green Party. These are the people who just are like, hey, new party, let's go. And they've got ideas that get you in trouble and stop your ability to grow. Bernier has to figure out what his party's about. He doesn't have that now. He was able to tap into the anger over vaccine mandates, passports, lockdown measures. Will that be there at the next election? And if he's a pure Conservative party, will the Greens that came to him stick around? Will people who were never involved in politics and are just angry at everything stick around? He's got to define it, and he hasn't done that yet. He's let his opposition define him. But yeah, he might want to run out west as opposed to the Boast, because 2 times running now, plus 1 time here in Toronto in the York Centre by-election, he needs to go where he can win. Alberta was the best for him, 7.5%. I think it was about 6% in Saskatchewan, and just over 5% in Ontario and British Columbia. So Alberta might be where he wants to go.
Now, we watch video of NDP leader Jagmeet Singh dancing and celebrating on stage after the election. But Brian, does he really have reason to celebrate?
Well, I mean, let's talk about kooks in politics. The NDP are happy just to show up, and it doesn't matter if they win or lose. In fact, they got rid of Tom Mulcair, who gave them their second best result ever after the 2015 election because he wasn't pure enough. They wanted someone who was never going to promise to balance the budget. Jagmeet Singh took them from 44 seats down to 24, and they acted as if he'd won the Super Bowl. Now he's taken them up to, I think he's sitting at about 28 right now. All these numbers can change, and they're still acting like they won. The NDP has to decide what they want to be. Are they just the conscience of Parliament, or do they want to replace the Liberals as the real progressive option? They've effectively done that in Alberta. They have effectively done that in British Columbia and Saskatchewan. Why aren't they doing it in the rest of the country? Well, they've done it in Manitoba as well. They need to start looking at themselves in that way on a federal level, especially in Ontario. You've got a prime minister who declares he's a progressive, but doesn't take sexual misconduct in his own ranks or military ranks seriously. A man who claims he's an environmentalist, but doesn't hit targets. A man who says he's a progressive looking out for the middle class, but doesn't care about inflation that's wrecking family budgets. This is a goldmine for the NDP. They need to decide that they're not there to prop up the Liberals. They're there to take over the Liberals. But they're not there yet because they're not taking politics seriously, despite being at almost 18% in the national vote.
Now, we only have a couple of minutes left here, Brian, but I wanted to ask you about the Green Party and their leader, Anna-May Paul, losing her bid to become MP for Toronto Centre, with Liberal Marcia Ian winning the riding. What does that mean for the Green Party moving forward?
She should have run somewhere else. They won a seat in Ontario. I believe this is the first time they've ever won a federal seat in Ontario. It was out in Kitchener, where the PPC did well as well. They won the urban core seat in that metropolitan area. Anna-May Paul finished 4th. The Conservative candidate did much better than her. The Conservative candidate got 15%, right here where I'm sitting in deepest, darkest Toronto Centre. That's a horrible result for them. But this is a party that, again, like I was saying about Bernier, he hasn't defined it. The Green Party did define themselves as the environmental party, but then they had all these people latching onto them with crazy ideas, including a bunch of anti-Semites. And they elected a black Jewish woman, and then it turns out there are racist anti-Semites helping run the party, and they're having infights. At the end of the day, Hal, now that we're at the end of the conversation, all the parties have internal problems with their leadership and defining who they are. Nobody should be walking away feeling great about it. The Conservatives did win the most in terms of total votes, but everybody else is coming down. Maybe it's time to stop and do some internal reflection.
And what does it say in the Bible? A kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. So they got to deal with that infighting. So, Brian, many political pundits believe that we may see another federal election in less than 2 years. What are your thoughts?
Well, the Prime Minister said if he didn't get his majority, we would have another election in 18 months. He said, well, no, I was just talking about the standard length of time that a minority parliament lasts. We know that's not the case. Minority parliaments can last longer. We also know he wants his majority. I say that Justin Trudeau will go for it the next time he sees, as they say in Quebec, winning conditions.
Political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly, thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
Being a parent is a challenging task for any of us, and it can get a lot tougher when you have blended families or special needs children. Joining us to discuss the support that is available to parents and caregivers is Penny Pittman. She's a family support worker with Family and Community Support. She joins us from Warner, Alberta. Welcome, Penny.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Now, Penny, I believe that you are overseeing something called Caregiver Cafe Groups. That's in the Warner, Milk River, and Coots areas. It's a cute little name. So can you maybe give us a little snapshot of who these groups are for and what's it all about?
Sure. So we took the Parent Cafe and sort of renamed it to a Caregiver Cafe. And these are groups that include anyone who cares for children in any capacity. So grandparents, guardians, foster families, step families, biological parents. And it's just a safe space for them to get together and talk about, sort of the joys and the challenges of caring for children and teens too. So it's basically from 0 to 18 years of age.
Yeah, okay, so that's awesome. Now, are these groups meeting in person or online or a little bit of both? I know COVID probably had affected it a little bit.
Yeah, so we unfortunately had just launched our first series just before the shutdowns in March. So we moved it to an online platform, and all of my groups so far have been on Zoom, and which has its challenges, but it also offers some benefits. So parents don't have to leave the house or find childcare.
Yeah, I actually could see a strong benefit for it being done over Zoom. You might actually even get a few more people. So that's awesome. So the idea behind this is to help build and maintain strong and healthy families, right? So how would you define that? What kind of traits does a healthy and strong family usually exhibit?
So resilience is probably one of the main ones. Good connection, good relationships within the family, communication, and really importantly, understanding and accessing support when they need it.
Okay, yeah, that sounds awesome. Now, I understand that the concept of this Caregiver Cafe is based around 5 protective factors, right? So the first one being parental resilience. Can you maybe explain what this means? Does it just have something to do with overcoming the tendency to get overwhelmed and just kind of give up?
Yeah, so resiliency is kind of like bouncing back. So I think about like a ball. And in addition to the bouncing back factor, it's the ability to be able to take some kind of lesson or learning and growth from that stressful experience. So it's a combination of those two things that build resilience.
Right, and I can see how being a group setting could actually really help. You can hear other struggles and see how they've been able to overcome it too. So it sounds really interesting. So I understand the second productive factor is relationships and social connections. So can you maybe unpack that for us? What does that look like?
So that's about, building healthy relationships. So understanding what that actually means, understanding what might not be a healthy relationship. And also then teaching that to your children and the people that you're caring for. What does that look like? Modeling, boundaries and what to do when you might be in a situation that isn't healthy for you. And because it's not everyone even understands what a healthy relationship looks like. And being able to bring that out in a safe place and talk about, what you deserve as a human being and understanding that you have worth and value, and having people around you that can help you remember that.
Yeah, definitely. And I understand there's a third protective factor, which is knowledge of parenting and child development. So what kinds of parental knowledge do you try to share with the groups?
Okay. So we talk about lots about ages and stages, positive parenting strategies or times when behavior might not be what you want it to be, how you can deal with that. Lots of stuff about brain development and really understanding the capacity of your child at any given time.
That's interesting. So what about child development? Is this about brain development, like you said, or is it more like emotional development, or is it a little bit of combination?
So it's sort of everything. So knowing sort of what's typical. So we use a questionnaire called the Ages and Stages questionnaire if we think it's needed, to see how children, what's typical for development and what can they or can't they do. So that can encompass like motor skills, speech, social emotional intelligence, things like that. And then we talk about, the developing brain, because when a parent can understand that the child just isn't actually capable of doing something, their brain just has not developed enough, it helps that parent step back and be a little more compassionate and sort of rely on the more positive parenting practices.
Now, it sounds like this is for caregivers of quite young children. Am I gathering that right? Or is this for any age group? And do you put them in different categories in terms of if you're a caregiver of a teen versus a 3-year-old? How does that work exactly?
Well, the interesting thing is that teens go through a brain development period that's very similar to, the 0 to 3, the toddlerhood, right? So you've probably heard the term three-nager, right? And that's kind of that idea.
It makes sense, doesn't it?
The concept is their brains are rapidly changing. So in the adolescent period, it's not as rapid, but they're going through all kinds of things. So typically we would split them up. There is a set of cards in a box for teens, parents of teens or caregivers of teens. However, when you start talking with parents, a lot of what they're talking about, those core principles, apply, I think, to humankind, but for sure, all the way through. Yeah.
So at what age group does it cut off? We're talking teens, or can we even be talking about like young adult children as well, like into their, I guess, late teens, early 20s?
Yeah, our mandate is 0 to 18. So we typically serve families in that age range, and we have been breaking the cafes up into 0 to 10, and then 12 to 18. So that's typically what we're doing right now. Yeah, just because as far as practical strategies go, those are going to look different.
Right, definitely.
Based on the age of your child, obviously.
And how many parents or caregivers are in each group, roughly?
Well, up to 10 in person, because in an hour, you really want to give everybody an opportunity to either break into smaller groups or to come together as a group and really let everyone have a chance to talk. Online, I've kind of found that 5 is a good number to allow that same sort of openness and
a little bit more
letting
manageable.
Things come forth, right?
Yeah. And plus, if it's a smaller group, some parents or caregivers might be more apt to want to share than if it's a much larger group. And oftentimes, there's certain people that are more dominant with talking, and others tend to keep back a little bit more. So yes, definitely. So as parents and caregivers, we need to become more aware of where the child is at, obviously, and to adjust our parenting styles accordingly. So what does that look like? It's easier said than done, for sure.
Right. So here's a quick example. just when you're wanting a child who's under 3 to take turns with a toy or share, or the part of their brain, the frontal part of their brain, which doesn't fully develop until, they're like 25 years old, doesn't have the capacity really to monitor their impulse control and their emotions properly. So if you're expecting that to happen on a regular basis without any big feelings about it, then that to me would not be a realistic expectation. So that would be a place you could support a parent in. Okay, well, if this is what they're capable of, what would that look like for you? How could you have an expectation that was realistic? And not that we aren't encouraging them and modeling and showing them, because that's what's growing those skills. We're just not expecting that they're going to willingly and happily share.
Yeah. Now, when you observe those families that have that opportunity to meet together with others going through those same things that they're going through, compared to people who don't, how much difference does that make in parenting or just going through life, really?
Yeah, so I can just speak to what I see and what I hear. And what I hear is parenting, especially small children, can be isolating, and with the world and the health situation has it's been even more so, and that having a space to talk about things where you aren't worried about being judged it just helps draw out those things that they're already doing well, because my job as a facilitator is to listen and help them see where they're already strong, so that we can draw on those strengths to just keep increasing their confidence, because more confident parent better. I mean, we all do better when we feel better, right? So that's what I notice. I notice an increase in confidence and sort of a little bit more compassion to themselves and more understanding of their children.
Wow, that's amazing. And what kind of feedback are you getting from parents and caregivers about this program?
So we're getting a lot of feedback about feeling connected, feeling supported, knowing where resources are, where they can be connected to those resources, not feeling judged, and meeting people. And this is one of the other really kind of fun things about Zoom is I recently had some parents, 2 moms connect from sort of the south end of the province and then up by, Colehurst area. And they've maintained that relationship. So it doesn't even have to be in your own community. So they've built a bond that never probably would have happened because we were able to be online. So things like that. And yeah.
I was going to ask you actually, being that you can do these online, can it reach people beyond the Warner, Coots, Milk River area? Have you opened it up, or are you kind of sticking strictly to those geographical areas?
No. So during the pandemic, FCSS has really tried to maintain a presence, and online was our only opportunity. So what's been happening is, like I said, we're getting participants. So every support worker in all of our municipalities might not be running the caregiver cafe, but maybe I'm running one, and participants from those other municipalities can join. So
that's good. I'm really glad that you mentioned that. Yeah, absolutely. And I understand too that FCSS also has caregiver cafe groups specifically designed for Indigenous families. So maybe explain a little bit, just really quickly, what is different with these groups? Is it more the cultural background that's included?
Well, so Jessica Goodrider Lowen is our family support worker and Indigenous liaison worker in Tabor. And her idea is to bring Indigenous families together to create that support network, so that they're aware that there are other families with their same cultural background in Tabor, and also to show up in a way that feels authentic for them. And, you know, we're all trained, you know, to be culturally sensitive in our programming. However, some of our staff have knowledge that can really benefit those Indigenous cultures.
That's awesome. So how would any interested parents or caregivers get signed up for this program? What do they have to do?
So go to the website. All of the information is listed there, the different areas, the different times, and all of the registration information is there. You can either go and look at the program, or you can just look for the family support worker in your municipality, and they will be able to get you hooked up with any programming that's running, even if it's not. So someone in Raymond could call the Raymond FCSS and they could direct them to me.
Great. And that's fcss.ca is the website for Family and Community Support Services. Thanks so much for your time today, Penny. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I hope to see more families.
Absolutely. Penny Pittman is a family support worker with the Family and Community Support Services. You can look them up at fcss.ca. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.